I met Katie virtually 10 years ago, Katie, when I first arrived in the US and you were running this phenomenal program under your brand, Skirt Strategies for women leaders and women in business. And I reached out and I said, Katie, this is amazing. You don't know me. My name is Modesta. I probably give you a whole spiel about, just emigrated here to the US with my husband and children. And I really need your program. I just can't afford you right now. And Katie was so kind as to let me in that program. And that really just not only did it orient me to the US and how things are done here, but it paved the way for the work that I do today. So Katie, thank you. And that's my hello and welcome. And then I want to read out your bio and we'll get into today's session. After an initial career as an engineer at Honeywell, Katie was recruited into a national consulting career, recruited by the Cumberland Group, a global pioneer in the industry of operational excellence, giving her a front row seat to the quality revolution that shaped Lean Six Sigma revolution. Beyond her corporate work, Katie champions female leaders through her platform, Skirt Strategies. Today, Katie focuses on leadership coaching and training, helping women navigate high-stakes professional change with resilience and composure. Katie, welcome to the Authority Advantage podcast.
Thank you. Oh, Modesta, so thrilled to be here with you.
The topic today is why competent women still get overlooked and why so many burn out trying to prove themselves.
Yeah.
My first question to you, Katie, is that many highly competent women leaders become indispensable to teams and organizations, yet they still struggle to be selected and endorsed at the highest levels. Where is the disconnect?
There's so many answers here, and it's complex, really. But I do think much of the light forward for how do I get myself over that hump? I know you know your listeners so much more intimately than I do, but I'm guessing that there are a lot out there that look forward with, where am I going next? Am I doing this right? What are other women doing? Why am I questioning myself? And often those questions get answered with some self-introspection. And for women, there's baggage. Not all women are the same as other women. Not all men are different than women. But in general, we've got a common trend that runs through us that has a desire to not just have the title as much as they want to have the position that makes a difference. There's egos are not involved for many of us. It's about the goodness. It's about gratitude. It's about giving back to the world. And so when we get in these positions where suddenly we've got the opportunity to move up, or we're getting ready to go into another arena that is, a different set of stakeholders, we start questioning ourselves. I know you're an expert in identifying those new arenas for them and putting the support structure around them. And it begins with us looking at whether we're prepared mentally for that. I'm guessing, think about the bigger environment that you're in, the bigger arena you're in, the more you're under a microscope. And then the more you know that people are looking at every small thing. When you see leaders that have the self-confidence and the composure, even if it's the wrong answer, you feel confident in them enough to say, well, that's the real deal. She at least knows what she's talking about. She at least is taking a path that she feels is the right answer. But often in our heads, we're second guessing that. And then, and the next thing you know, if we don't hold up to it, we've totally disassembled ourselves. So I want to go back to, that's kind of a complex thing that goes on because it has to do with our head game and our self-talk. When you and I first met 10 years ago and I was launching this online course that had taken everything that I had learned over decades as a consultant and built a great career, on top of a technical career, which would have been a slam dunk. Stay in the engineering world, Katie. There were some weirdities with that too, because being a female engineer in the in the 80s, I have some funny stories, but staying in that. And I had colleagues, the guys that I'd worked with through those 80s and 90s they stayed with the company forever. And, they're all going through retirement here and there right now. It would have been predictable. It would have been straightforward. I wouldn't have had to go build my career other than moving up in the technical organization. I look back at that though, And I wonder how different of a person would I have been than this person that got recruited into consulting. So I was, kind of snatched up from that technical organization by a national consulting firm that had fantastic culture and had their hearts in the right place and saw me as a great fit. Forever grateful to them, and they were my mentors for years and years. And now I'm in this environment, you know, several decades ago, where now I'm a consultant and people are looking at me like, she's not old enough to be a consultant. Why should I be listening to her? So there were some challenges for that as well. But as that transitioned into this business that had to do with, let's take all that consulting that I've learned, put it into a package and work with other women that are at that same threshold of figuring out, how do I take this confidence and this competence and this expertise and now make it work in a different arena, kind of like going into, a different arena with the folks that you work with now. How do I take them and transition into that and teach them what I've learned so that they can excel? At the heart of that was what I think women give back to their career community, but also their family and their neighborhood community, is this sense of, let's make it a better place.
Yeah.
We know that global communities and global governments, this is statistically proven, when there are more women at the table, we see better social topics addressed. We see better public health. We see crime addressed better. All of these natural nurturing topics that you and I have. And to me, that was, pulling you into my course wasn't easy, because it was, here's gratitude I'm giving back to the world. She's going to be an addition, and I would love to have her as part of my pack. And that did indeed prove to be true.
Yeah.
So that I'd say that gratitude piece that we're so good at as women, that gratitude piece, when it comes back to us in the work environment and the career environment, it's a little cue that you want to chase. If you're feeling like, oh, I'm so grateful for that, make that the tickler that tells you, hey, maybe you should go talk to that person and give them that gratitude, or maybe you should follow through on an action with it, because it does pay off. I'm sure everyone's situation in your listening pack is so radically different from one another. I do think that there's a dichotomy between the fake it to make it, because the fake it to make it sounds so counterintuitive to this. Be genuine, be authentic, be yourself.
Yeah.
But if yourself is really questioning, wow, maybe that wasn't the right thing to do, then maybe saying, wow, that wasn't the right thing to do. Maybe maybe you want to admit that. Maybe you want to show a little vulnerability can sometimes build trust between your followers. But if you do that too much or you go too far, now they're like, she doesn't know what she's talking about.
Yeah. Why are you following her?
Yeah. And women get tagged with that a lot, because our natural way of making decisions is collaborative and with a community. And that looks like, well, Jim, what do you think? Well, Rebecca, what do you think? Well, where are you going with that idea, Jessica? And you get the group talking, which can be so valuable, takes longer, sounds like you don't have an idea in your mind itself. And now some people in the room are like, she doesn't know the answer. No, that's not what I'm doing. I'm actually investing time in making this a collaborative decision.
Mm-hmm.
So one tip that I do give women that are in that scenario is, sometimes you have to frame what you're doing so people understand it. And that's a uniqueness with women, is this natural tendency to pull community together to make decisions. And it's got to be understood what your intent is behind it, and that you're taking the time.
That leads me to my next question, Katie, is that it's a question of authority. You keep saying that, and you may look like you don't know what you're doing. It may make them feel that, why should we follow her? So since it could be an authority, which is really that other people trust you with leading them, I am going to embrace who I am as a woman, what comes naturally, and the fact that I want to be collaborative and bring everybody together. But if I just go ahead and do that without framing that, without precursing that with something, then people will have question marks. I wonder if the women who do seem to have authority in their context and are taking their space, being who they are, use tips like the one you just gave. Frame, you know, frame what it is you're doing so that everybody around the room understands what's going on. It's not that I don't have an idea of my own. It's not that I'm buying time because I'm clueless. What other observations would you say women that seem to stand confidently in their authority and their contribution in a leadership context seem to embody that others could learn from?
A lot of communication tips, Modesta. Through the years, there are certain favorites that I have that work well. There's something that I call a pocket phrase. A colleague actually taught me that term. A pocket phrase is something that you use, you pull, figuratively out of your pocket when you need to more or less improve the communication or bring it to something that's a little bit more stable. One of my favorite pocket phrases is say a little bit more about what's important to you, or what's important to you, or what's leading you to that decision. That gets a communication going two-way, and it lets the other person know super fast that I'm interested in what's important to you, but it also gets them thinking, which is the power of a question, right? In a lot of positions, you don't have the time for that. And your listeners only hear small sound bites that are excerpted and not in context, right? That's a really tough scenario to have to deal with. There's a tip that I use. I call it the two-channel conversation. When I'm in my head composing what I'm saying, because a lot of times that takes up a good percentage of our brain. So I have to think about what I'm saying, think about what I'm saying. Now I've stopped reading cues from their nonverbals and their verbals. I've stopped taking what they're saying and processing at the same time. So I think of it as this two-channel. There's what I'm thinking and going this way, and there's what they're thinking and coming this way. That's not rocket science, which I'm actually very comfortable with rocket science. I love the rocket science. But that's not rocket science, but it is a visual that helps just enough for me to slow down this enough to make sense of this. And somewhere in there is also the dynamic of, as I'm saying this, is it coming across? I'm almost listening to myself as if I'm in their feet, in their shoes. Is it coming across the way that I mean for it to? So I listen to myself as if I'm a listener over there as well. That's a lot of mental juggling going on, but you do get good as you practice it just a little bit more. Thinking of that model, though, makes you slow down just a bit, makes you stop this so you can take that in just a little bit more. I find that to be super helpful.
This is powerful. And then you said, you made this expression that you still need to control that on your side, right? And I think we give too much power to our audience, to our stakeholders, and then struggle to try to manage their expectations when we left everything to them, right? So you're initiating something, but you're not framing it. You're not, posturing it. And then now when it's received, however different people may receive things, you're trying to keep up with that.
Yes.
And what I'm hearing is own it.
Own it.
That I don't want to ever pretend to be anyone I am not. And this is how I process and how I communicate. Being here is my superpower. This is where I feel confident. If I try to be anything different, that will be compromised. Then I need to translate me to the world. I have to own that by framing things, by positing, by scripting or guiding through 1, 2, 3. Many a times we leave absolutely everything about the way we're received to whosoever is before us. And then we're scrambling, trying to either maintain that identity or that opinion, or negate it, or, explain it. But if you take ownership from the beginning, I sense that you would have a more powerful engagement and possibly more willing collaborators.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Great setup. Because we can use the same scenario of, let's say a problem is on the table. I've got a couple of ideas that I want to launch a few people on, but I don't have the answer. Own that. I don't have the answer. I'd actually say, I'd make it the problem. I'd say, well, the solution to this problem isn't completely clear to us yet. How different does that sound? Like, I don't know the answer. Just language right there is more like, hey, it's our issue.
Yeah.
The solution to that is not clear to us yet. I do have 3 areas that I think we can start doing a little bit of exploring around. So follow me on this, everyone. And they'll sound like they're in 3 completely different areas, but let's follow that and do a little discovery and come back and see where we are in it. Now, I have a plan that's not the answer because I didn't tell myself right in the beginning, oh my gosh, they're looking at me for the answer. I've got the authority. I have to have the answer. The answer isn't there yet. So, but I do have the interim, which is a really clear plan. So if I start to see, and then I'll add the dynamic of, let's say somebody pushes back on that. So I start to see one of the constituents, start to crinkle his eyes like, God, she doesn't know what she's doing. And for many of us, that deep-seated baggage that we have around, do I belong here? I've been in scenarios where I was the only woman in the room. I actually got to the point where I stopped noticing it, and I still don't, sometimes I don't notice it, unless there starts to be a gender-based, direction that they're going. And then suddenly I'm like, why are they talking about sports all of a sudden? But generally I don't notice it anymore. But that little bit of baggage, if you see someone, it's a constituent pushing back or looking at someone else and rolling their eyes, or you hear something secondhand, that can crumble you really fast if you let it. Instead, the recognition around, just like the recognition around listening to what you're thinking and you're saying, the self-talk management, the recognition around what's happening that person had a reaction to.
Yeah.
I'm not positioning, this is the way I manage it. And I catch it most of the time. I'm not 100%. Sometimes it's like, oh God, I'm failing. But generally, if I look at it as it is what it is, that person does not have the confidence in me.
Yeah.
Guess what? It's probably something that's going on in their head. It's probably not about me. It's
Yeah.
probably about issues that they had with a family or a female authority. Or so I set that aside just a little bit and don't take it personally. And then I more or less, take it straight on. Like if they were in the room, I might say, Jeremy, I know it sounds like there's a part of this that we just don't know yet. Trust me on it. We got to go forward with it. And as a team, I know we can find out more. Here's what I'm doing and here's what I'm going to take the team to do. Instead of, oh my gosh, maybe this isn't a good idea. But that's where your authenticity comes back into reassuring yourself, this is the plan I had. I want to go through with it. I think it makes sense to me. I might entertain other ideas, but I've also got to figure out at what point do I stop opening it up to debate? And I just say, no, guys, this isn't the final decision anyway. This is a great interim step. You go do this, you go to this, you go to that. Let's come back, huddle, and we'll figure out whether we've got a solution. Another small self-management trick that I use, and I tell leaders this, is if you feel like you're prone to being shot down, in your own head.
Yeah.
When you're interacting with someone and it's, if you picture standing face to face, often when I'm with a group, I'll have somebody stand up, with me and be face to face, shoulder to shoulder. Maybe I'm a manager and this is my employee and we're working on a problem. It's easy to set up the feel for this being a you, me because of the way we're standing. This is a super easy thing to fix when you're in the right scenario. And in fact, the word discussion has the word cuss in it, not the word cussing at each other. Cuss means to hit, percussion, concussion, it means to hit. So a discussion is throwing words back and forth. If instead I can set up this scenario to be realistically or visually shoulder to shoulder. So I might take this person, if I'm in the hallway with them, we get shoulder to shoulder and now even if there's nothing in front of us that we're looking at, sometimes it's a map, sometimes it's a project report, sometimes it's something. If I can get us to stand shoulder to shoulder and look at what we're talking about in something that's non-human, now it's about us working together to do this instead of it me having to discuss with you and it feels like it's I got to win. No, it's not about us. It's about us working well together to make this happen. And that can be, that's so much more relieving than feeling like I have to win this other scenario.
And so far, we've been talking about how women absolutely, are amazing at collaborating. And we've been talking about leading through collaboration. But I wonder then, and often, this is where it gets uncomfortable, what it takes to transition from such an effective collaborator, even though you're leading the collaboration, to standing as an individual leader with people and budgets and these organizations in your charge.
So you want to go, this would be someone that's wanting to go from feeling like I've got the authority, I'm the point at the top of that spear, and people are recognizing me that way.
Yeah, from from a respected contributor to a trusted authority.
To a trusted. Yeah. Yeah. Modesty, do your followers kind of have their story or their brand well pounded out at that point in their career? Is that kind of an area they're still doing work?
That's an area that's still doing work. Well, it depends, right? I've got, let's say, mid and director level people well, the podcast that are looking to get into, let's see, C-suite roles, for instance. And then I have established executives, whether they're part of a corporate structure or they're founders of their own firms, or maybe they're in a different sector. The public sector would have a different equivalent. And they too are struggling with having a role in the organization and having to stand and distinguish themselves as the leader with whom the buck stops. Like the buck stops with me and I am comfortable in my skin. And we're talking about women leaders here in particular. What did Margaret Thatcher say? It's getting to a place where I'm comfortable to call the shots or to stand on this principle or with this direction. And they trust me as an authority to be able to do that.
Yeah. Well, the trust piece, of course, doesn't happen overnight.
No.
And on the path to that, it's operating in a way where you can get a lot done without them trusting. There's a lot that can be happening. I just need you to follow it. I need to make and keep agreements. And if I keep that relationship with my constituents, I make and I keep agreements. And the nuances behind that are I need to be straightforward about what those agreements are. I need to be clear if the environment changes or the factors around it change, I need to come out and renegotiate. I don't need to just bury it because people will be like, well, why didn't she follow through on that? And I might be thinking, oh, because the resources changed. Everybody knows that. No, you got to come right out and say, okay, folks, we were going to go this way, but we can't now because this has changed. So that making and keeping agreements to me is the actionable piece of trust. I can't come sit down with you and say, just trust me. In fact, that always sets off a kind of red flag when someone says, you can trust me. Like, you can't tell me that I can trust you. You have to kind of build that. So often a model that I use has that as a foundation. A trust model that I have in my head is a make and keep agreements. And then people start being more open with you. And when they start being open with you, it's an indication that they're starting to trust me, or they might come to you with information that you didn't have and say, hey, heads up, Katie, in this other area, we were making a decision around this, and I think it may affect you. Where I wouldn't have heard that unless someone felt that they could be open with me and translate that information. So I find the trust is frustrating because it doesn't just happen and you can't walk into a relationship, but that making and keeping agreements is what I would say. Focus on that and then let the trust happen. I wonder whether you have to step back occasionally and do a little inventory of how often am I collaborating with my followers? How often am I pulling them in? And then occasionally jumping in and making okay, here's what's going to happen next. The decision that it's this breath of fresh air because they're like, okay, somebody's moving it forward. They know you have the authority to do it, but there's also that unwritten authority. It's like, the whole power principle that it's not about title. It's about how you influence that sphere around you. And bringing them in and building that trust is one thing, but also occasionally, take a look at, am I occasionally moving the needle forward as well by using that authority and saying, this is what's going to happen next.
Yeah. And what I'm hearing you say is actually the more effective you are as a respected contributor, the more likely you will build the trust then that others will impute authority, which is really that they can trust you to lead them and they would then even defer to you because now they trust you, right?
Yeah.
Because you were great as a collaborator. You were great
Yes.
when decisions were made together.
Right.
Yeah. Now,
Right.
I want to speak about burnout a little bit, if it's
Okay.
okay. So we're speaking about how, competent women get overlooked. And so too many of us work ourselves crazy to try to prove ourselves, to the point of burnout. And have consistently done that women who end up burning out do not. You said perspective.
The way you look at it, the way you remember that old book, don't sweat the small stuff and it's all small stuff. And even if it's
Yeah.
kind of big stuff, you can't sweat it. There's a certain resistance is futile piece
Yeah.
that you have to accept because when it's that strain in your heart that every day you're like, ugh, you're pushing back. You're like, I got to do this. I got to do that. When you just let it flow over you, you're going to be more creative. You're going to be a better critical problem solver. You're going to be more managed and calm if you just let some things happen. It doesn't mean you're laissez-faire. It means you're looking at a way where you're letting yourself just kind of say, okay, this is a part of this is a part of the job. It's like that person that I often will get people that are so stressed out at work because they have, by the time they leave at the end of the day, they still have a big inbox. I'm pointing to it like it's actually an inbox, like so it used to be an actual inbox, right? Or
Yeah.
they've got things that, oh my gosh, I still have all this to do. Why are you resisting that? Your job is actually designed to be more than your 40 hours a week or 60 or whatever it might be. Your job is not a one person scope.
Yeah.
It's probably a 1.5 person scope. So your job is just finding what's coming up to the top. I'm assessing as higher priority. What can I do that gives me a little bit of momentum? And a lot of that is time management skills and project management skills. And then that bottom 50% or 25% of whatever my whole workload is, that's not getting addressed, it's there intentionally. If it's something I should be working on, then I need to look at my priority assessment technique. But resisting that, going home thinking, oh, that big pile of stuff that I couldn't get done, or I'm burning out because everyone's pushing back on me. Guess what? That's the nature of it. It's actually okay. Look at it as maybe a good thing. They feel comfortable telling you what they're thinking.
Yeah.
You can
Yeah.
absolutely burn out on that if you don't step back and just look at this is the nature of this beast. And it's going crazy and pulling my hair out is not going to get it done any faster. I might scream into a pillow every once in a while, but leadership is that way. It's the, like I said, resistance is futile from what's that from Star Trek? Resistance is futile. You just gotta have to give in sometimes to it's gonna have a next big thing that's falling through. It's gonna have the next resistant person that's up against you. It's going to have something came out in the papers that says, that puts me in a bad light. And you step back and you're like, kind of knew it was coming. And that's the next thing. It is what it is. And you just let it go by like the next wave.
Yeah.
I know that's kind of Pollyannish, but if you don't do that, your your blood pressure's up all the time.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's not really worth it. It's, everything that's coming down the pike, you kind of probably could have seen it coming down the pike at some point.
Because this is leadership.
Yeah.
This is what you signed up for.
Yeah. Remember
This,
that sign from Billie Jean King that says pressure is a privilege? It's right for those of you that follow tennis. It's right at the
yeah.
entrance to Roland Garros. It's a sign that every player, as they see right before they walk out onto the court, Billie
Yeah.
Jean King, pressure is a privilege. That pressure is there because you're in a privileged position.
Yes. And what I'm hearing is perspective, framing, ownership. Own your perspective, frame things, such that it sets the scene for others to be able to be part of this thing. And at the end of the day, this is what you signed up for. And it's probably only going to get more complex with greater responsibilities. And sometimes this may not be what people want to hear. But this is leadership. You signed up for this. There's a book I read and I shared. I mean, I bought copies and copies and shared. And it's by Dan and Chip Heath, Switch, How to Change Things When Change is Hard.
Yeah.
Love that book.
Yeah.
And one of the stories from that book is how this engineering manager taught his team and also held the space for his team to fail. They factored in failure as part of their experiments and part of their work so that people didn't have such an adverse emotional reaction to it and then, be tentative about trying anything. That
Yeah.
failure is part of the process. So
Yes.
let's embrace it. Let's go full throttle and then, interrogate what happened here and use it. And I think this mindset then allows a woman to confidently, a woman leader to confidently take their space without thinking they have to be anything else or, drive themselves mad to keep the role. Each time you spoke, Katie, I felt almost as if you said, give yourself permission to have pause between stimulus and I feel like you're saying just own it and it's okay. You don't have to have all the answers. Give yourself the space to pause and think through from stimulus to response.
Yes. And in fact, an interim decision is still a decision. Maybe the first question is, when do we need to have this figured out? And
Yeah.
if it's a week from now, then it's like, okay, well, here's the decision for now. The decision for now is we're going to all huddle and we're going to do this and this and that. That is leadership. That's a decision. It's not the final decision, but it gets everybody pointing in a certain direction. So I wonder how often, your leaders do misread what needs to be done right now. And then because we're often role modeling cognitively, conscientiously or not, I guess it, the way a man would do it.
Yeah.
That's overgeneralization, but a lot of times we'll role model someone that is decisive, makes quick, directive, firm decisions, and we think, wow, that was really good.
Very interesting. And what you spoke about right now about the missed opportunity to just be you and lean in on your strengths rather than
Yeah.
trying to adopt. One of the most powerful things that we've shared today is when you spoke about, owning the not just perspective internally, but the framing. That's you translating yourself to others. Do you know this is the bridge? Continue being who you are, contributing what you're strong at. And if you feel in any way that you're in a context where that might be misunderstood, or there's that Jim there sitting in a board meeting thinking, rolling his eyes, then, set the scene for what's to come. Don't
Yeah.
compromise and try to be somebody you're not, or try to be a man when you're actually a woman leader. Set
Yeah.
for them. You know what they're looking for and what they, what maybe even the system tends to reward or value. Then, it's upon you to prepare the system for your leadership
Yes.
rather than just feel as if I have to either, look like everybody else, sound like everybody else, or else, I don't fit in. And I think, the women
Right.
leaders that do that will probably last longer. You still get pushback, but you're owning your space and you're at the end of the day delivering what they're looking for.
Yeah.
As
Yeah. I talked about vulnerability a little bit ago. Where's the line? There's no answer to this, by the way. Where's the line between showing vulnerability because it helps people understand that you're a human too, and if they say that she's struggling with that, or yeah, that's a hard decision. I wouldn't be able to do it. It's because she told me it was a hard decision. Versus, I don't want to see you struggling with it. I want you to bury that, Katie. I want you to just be confident. So where is that little bit of, that you can share because that's authentic versus, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. Sitting there and saying, I don't know what to do is too vulnerable. What do you know how to do? Flip it around to, well, what do we know how to go forward with here? And do you just use you know, your best girlfriend coffee buddy or a martini after work that you can confide in for venting and getting therapy there, or a coach
yeah,
or a therapist
or all of the above.
or all of the above, and together they'll put together a picture of something forward. And for many of us, that's just what it takes is if I can talk through it out loud and it not be someone that's a constituent of mine, because that could be inappropriate. But if I can talk about it out loud, I can start to see, I got it. And then you know where to go forward.
Last question for you, really just closing the loop on what we just shared. If a highly capable woman leader who's listening to us today feels exhausted, overlooked, or stuck despite years of strong performance, what would be the first practical step she can take today to signal her readiness for selection and endorsement at higher levels. She's been running this entire time and doesn't feel like it's getting her anywhere. What can she do today to change her trajectory?
Good question. If she's staying in the same lineage, we're assuming that she's wanting to move up in the
Yeah.
hierarchy she is right now.
Yeah.
It might sound trite, but you have to wonder where there's an opportunity for someone to be a sponsor for her.
Yeah.
And my experience, by the way, when I've been in organizations or worked with organizations that have mentoring or sponsoring, no one has defined for those mentors or sponsor leaders what it looks like. So they don't know. So they're like, oh, I'd love to sponsor you. And then they're like, and so they make it up themselves, and maybe it was a good approach or not. So I have to wonder: is there someone? Maybe start with this: is there someone above you that could help pave the way, or at least give you some insight? What's it like? What did you learn? Does it have to be a woman? No. In fact, there's a lot of power in it being a man, because there's many men that'll be like, I want to help any minority that's trying to move up is working against the statistics here. I want to be able to help. Most men would jump at that opportunity, but you have to give them the how-tos. And maybe that involves, we sit down once a month or every 2 weeks, and I ask, as the follower, I ask specific questions.
Yeah.
What scenarios are you in where you find yourself having to make a decision?
Yeah.
What do you do? What works well here? What tends to backfire and why?
Yeah.
Answer to that's going to be, well, it depends on who you're in front of, because don't talk about this with that person because they can't stand that. And this person is the kind of decision maker that you better come to the table with data and statistics. Otherwise they can't move off the decision mark. So they'll give you that insight as to how that goes. But then also, are you in environments where you can take me with you? Are there times when I can be seen as your mentee or someone that you're grooming? If that you think helps you. I believe strongly in understanding social styles, and what works with one person does not necessarily work with another. As that example of so and so needs a lot of data. I'm working with a director right now that is very deliberate in decision making and needs to have the data in front of him to do it. He's not the kind that I can go in and throw a couple of ideas at. He's the kind that likes to sit and incubate on it. So knowing what you're interacting with, not just with individual style, but the culture of, the organization has its own personality and what works at some place and what does not. I think that if you can find something like that, that would be great. I would also say, and this is one of the tips in the Skirt Strategies book, is find some platform that you can speak. And in larger organizations, they'll have a leadership association or a women's training. Maybe it's women, maybe it's not. Maybe it's an electronic newsletter that you can add an article in. Maybe it's speaking at a luncheon. Always amazed me that when you have the courage to speak publicly, either in writing or in a class or in a social or luncheon setting, people look at you like, she just said it from the platform, so it must be true. What your brand is and you're presenting it, people get to know you a little bit more. And I know many people would rather die in a house fire than speak publicly. Their organizations are always looking for people to speak or to write an article or to, come to this small training. What do you know that others don't? Make it into a training, make it into a lunch and learn. Ask to speak at the executive retreat because you found something that works well at your level and you want to just share it. That sort of leaning into is people start seeing you as a go-getter and someone that has no fear.
Yeah. This is so powerful, Katie. Thank you. You won't open your own doors. It's, you can leverage your support system, but at the end of the day, it really just sounds like stress less about them and how they'll receive, how you can show up as yourself, but, in such a way that they would value and be open, to you influencing them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It helps to be likable, and we're generally at some level, all of us are likable by being yourself.
More so likable when you stay being yourself than trying to be anything.
Yes. Sense that in a heartbeat for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else, Katie, that you'd like to share with, the Authority Advantage podcast community before we go?